Hi, I'm Tolulope Kolade, Tcode, an African voiceover artist from Nigeria, and this is my podcast, Everything Voiceovers, the African Perspective Podcast, where I take you on a journey to discovering industry insights through expert interviews, practical tips, and personal anecdotes.
You can simply call this your go-to resource for all things voiceover related. Buckle up as we discover the art, craft, and business of voiceovers through a uniquely African lens on this episode. Enjoy!
Hi guys, welcome to another episode of the Everything Voiceovers podcast, the African Perspective. It's me, your host, Tcode, your voiceover artist from Nigeria. And on this podcast, this is where I get to interview voiceover artists across the continent. I'm happy because this is the third season of the podcast and we're starting well. And for you all that have been excited about the fact that we are having a video podcast, yep. And it feels good to be able to see my guest and talk to them. So that's one of the developments we've added to the podcast so far. And I'm enjoying it because as voiceover artists, we get to do a lot of talking behind the camera. But now you get to see us in front of the camera. So you see what I look like and you see what my guests look like. And if you're wondering what we look like, you can go check us out on YouTube. All right. So let's get into it. On this episode, I've got a fantastic voiceover artist as my guest. It's been a long time that I've wanted to have her on the podcast since season 1, I think. But now, finally, she's here in season 3. She's a professional voiceover actor and a sound engineer. And she's done amazing works in the audiobook world and also in the animation world. And she's also doing incredibly well in commercials alongside many other genres of voiceover. I'm talking about no other person than one of Nigeria's sweetest voiceover artists. Her name is Serah Johnson. Hello, Serah.
Hi, Tcode. I'm super excited to be here. Hi, guys.
Yeah, super excited to have you too on the podcast. And how's it over there? How is Abuja? And how he's been a solo voiceover artist or an indie voiceover artist, if there's anything like that. Because for podcasters, we say indie podcaster. And that's just a term to say that you run your stuff. You run your home studio. You do your editing and stuff. How's it been over there?
Well, Abuja is very peaceful. Being an indie voice artist with my own studio. I mean, it's definitely been a new experience, right? Very beautiful one, though, not gonna lie. There's nothing like seeing that audition you want to go for and then just going for it immediately, waking up by 3 a.m. when inspiration hits and just going for it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's been really beautiful.
It's really a cool vibe. I know what that feels like. Yeah. I mean, you get to record till 3 a.m. in the morning if you like and go to bed and wake up and you have that independence. But guys, it's not as easy as we're saying it because actually in reality, it takes a lot to be able to give yourself that kind of convenience and, to do things at your own terms. Because in Nigeria, we have a lot of issues with power. And there's the noise factor for everybody. I think that's all over the world. I mean, you just have to be lucky. Yeah.
Even aside the fact that you just get to create when inspiration hits, there's also the part where I get to have like different voiceover artists come in and just be a part of my world, right? And come record. And, I'm trying to build like a community of voiceover actors here in Abuja. So it's always super amazing, right? To have people around. And having this space has just given me the opportunity to do that.
Wow. For me personally, my studio has always been like my studio. But it's sounding like you have voiceover artists coming from time to time and they also probably pay for recording a studio session or something like that. But that's really cool. So if I come to Abuja, I have a studio that I can go and record and Serah is going to give me some discount.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
you know.
All right. So there's a lot we have to talk about, and we're still coming back to this conversation about studio real soon. But
Yeah.
for people who don't know who Serah Johnson is,
Yeah.
like I already said, she's a voiceover artist. But I want to know who Serah Johnson was before voiceover artist.
Voiceover
But
artistry.
basically, who is Serah Johnson? Let's even say, yeah, who are you? Who is Serah Johnson?
Sarah Johnson is this pretty passionate, pretty excited child at heart who finds a thing and then just throws the whole of herself into it. Um, I think she's pretty kind and she loves to be a witness to other people's growth, especially the people around her. And not just witness, but contribute to it. She loves creativity, anything creative expression through different means, right? And she loves dogs but is allergic to them.
Nice. That's interesting. Creativity, it's written all over you. But I have a very interesting question, which
Yeah.
is voiceover. Did you think you were going to be a voiceover artist? I mean, we don't still have voiceovers in the university where people can go and say, I want to study to become a voiceover artist. So, how did voiceovers come for you?
When I was a child, you know how everybody always has this vision of what they want to be when they grow up. So, some people is, oh, I want to be at this, I want to be at that. For me, I wanted to be a doctor, right?
Mm.
And I had the brains for it. But the Nigerian education system, yeah, when I was trying to get admitted into school, my one thing or the other happened, but I hit the cutoff mark for everything required. Okay, I'll say the truth. I wasn't old enough to study medicine.
Wow.
by just a year by just a year, I was this whiz kid, right? So I
Wow.
graduated secondary school at the age of 14. And yeah, I had a pretty good jam score, a pretty good post UTME score, but the school I wanted to go to wouldn't admit me for medicine. I was ready to explore other options, but still nobody would admit me to study medicine at the age of 15. So I tried. I got into school. I got admission for the course zoology, and that was just supposed to be me passing time, getting used to the educational system in university, and then the next year I was supposed to try again. So I tried again the next year. It didn't work out. By this time I was old enough to study medicine, but still it didn't work out. I didn't get admitted to study medicine. And I was just pretty sad. I was pretty downcast. Really sent me down the depression route. I was pretty depressed for some time. It was a situational depression. I hated the fact that I didn't like the course that I was doing. I felt stuck in it. I was good at it, right? Because I graduated well, but I wasn't in love with it, right? And then I'm someone who's pretty big on purpose. I feel like anything you're doing should be deeply rooted in purpose. You should walk purpose. You should breathe purpose. So it just felt like, what am I doing here? I'm wasting time, right? And I would go like, God, just show me what I'm supposed to be doing. I know I'm not meant to be here. And so there was this really popular radio station just outside of my school called Royal FM. It was one of the biggest radio stations, if not the biggest radio station at that time in the city of Ilorin. And someone was there and they were looking for a female voiceover artist. And they're like, the person went, see, that's another lesson on networking and the right people mentioning your name in the room. And he was like, I know this girl. She's not a voiceover artist, but she has a really nice voice and she has a way with words. And they're like, okay, bring her in. And they brought me in. And now note that I grew up watching commercials, listening to all the popular jingles we had, like Skybank, always there.
Shout out to
Those
Shim
ads,
Shobo.
like big shout outs, that his story comes later in the story of my growth in
Yeah.
voiceover, right? So
Yeah.
I had grown up listening to the radio, listening to commercials on TV, but I never knew it was a job description, right? And even till now, in my big age, I still watch cartoons. I love watching cartoons. So, I didn't know that the people that do that had a job description called voiceover. Now follow me, it's all going somewhere. So when I found myself
Okay.
in the radio station with the person calling me in to come and just record this voiceover, that was my very first voiceover. It was for Quara at 50, right? And I started recording and I did the first take. They're like, wow, you're so good. You're like a natural at this thing. Have you done voiceover before? And I'm like, no, this is my first time in a studio. I didn't know it was a thing. I'm like, this is a thing. Like people do this, you know. And that was how um after I finished recording the voiceover, they just gave me 5K. And I was like, just for that small work, you give me 5K. That's crazy. Like I had so much fun. It's like you're giving me 5K to just come and have fun. Okay, great. So I would
And what
come,
year was
like
this?
it was just a this was 2016 or 2017.
Okay.
Yeah, so it felt really nice to just come in, have fun, do all that. And um that was when they encouraged me and they were like, you have a really nice voice, you should consider this, it's actually a career path. And it just got me thinking, like, wow, I love this. And for the first time in such a long time, I felt like I was in purpose, like I was doing something that mattered, I was adding value. And I was like, yep. And I really love this Chinese term called ikigai, right? So I'm a very big reader.
Yeah.
I, that's why I'm in audiobooks, right?
Mm.
So I'd been reading something about ikigai and a lot of things about purpose. So it was like, ikigai. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to go down this path. So now the next phase was, how do I break it to my dad that I'm not studying medicine again and I want to be a voiceover artist? you know, this child that wanted to study medicine is now
Yeah.
coming up to tell you she wants to do voiceover. I'm like, what's going on? But I mean, yeah, pretty much that
Yeah.
was that. To cut the long story short, that was how I got into voiceover. Then the following year, no, 2 years after, because 2019 I was busy with schoolwork but still working in voiceover. I got into radio at that time as well. And then 2020 we had COVID. I'd been wanting to go to voiceover academy all this while. So but I couldn't because school, then COVID. So 2021 packed up my bags and then went to voiceover academy. And that was it.
Mm.
That was the push I needed to it just pushed me into the world of voiceover properly. I had already been doing voiceover for like 2 years, and a lot of people had already been seeing me like, oh, this girl is good. I'd been booking small jobs and all
Yeah.
that. But then, yeah,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
2021 was when I decided to take voiceover seriously, and I did. And that was the year I made my
Mm.
first million.
Wow. Was it the same year you
Yeah.
took the training at the Voiceover Academy?
Oh, yeah, it was.
Awesome. Wow. I mean,
It
it's
was.
it's
It
it's not
was.
one of those things you hear often. A lot of people have been doing voiceovers, but making a million is not so, because of how the pricing system here works, right?
Well,
Although I think
that's
it's
true.
getting better gradually. Yeah. So I
Yeah.
am also guessing that the gig that made you your first million wasn't a Nigerian gig. Am I
No, it
correct?
wasn't.
Did I
You're
guess
very
right?
correct.
You see, you see, but yeah, that's the thing, and it's another conversation really about pricing. But congrats to you having to bag your first 1 million in your first year of attending an academy. I have a very interesting question, which is about how what difference did he bring to your voiceover career? Because I know Serah Johnson had been doing voiceovers before the Voiceover Academy. And I guess you were even already making gigs or getting gigs on Upwork before that time. So if I'm correct, or if I'm wrong, correct me. But then
Yeah, you're
what
correct.
difference did it make attending? Yeah. So what did difference really did it make in your career attending a voiceover academy?
Okay, so I'll start from here, right? One of the things that I'm forever thankful to God for is a unique ability I have to mimic accents, and make different character voices. So that was one of the things that convinced me to get into voiceover because it's something that not many people can do, right? So that was what made me able to book international gigs because I narrate most of the books that I make in a North American accent, for example, or a British accent. You
Wow.
get me? So as much as I was
And it
doing that, I
works.
still had some struggle. It works. It works, right? I mean,
Wow.
through constant study and practice, aside from the fact that I have the innate talent, right? Worked hard on it and
Mm-hmm.
perfected it, just I still am every other day. That's the thing with voiceover. You never stop learning. I'm
Yeah.
constantly working on it, constantly getting better. Most people when they hear my voiceovers, they're like, "That's you?" But like, "You sound like this." I'm like, "Yeah, this is my Nigerian accent." you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's by the way. Coming back to that is as much as I was, and it's crazy because as much as I was able to book my first million in 2021, I was still underpaid. I knew I was doing a lot of
Mm.
work for the amount of money that I was receiving. Oh, trust me, I'm a studio rat. And that
Yeah.
2021, it was like, ugh, I'm going to go at this thing. Like I said, I'm just
Yeah.
that kind of person. Once I find something I'm passionate about, I pour myself into it. So, knowing that I had a
Yeah.
problem with all those things, I listed them out and I knew, okay, I'm going to this academy so that I can have a community of voiceover artists. So that was another thing. It felt like I was in isolation. I didn't have a lot of people that were voiceover
Mm.
artists around me. So it felt
Mm.
like I was just going on this path alone, right? The only other people I had connections with were the likes of Femi Bakes because we went to the same school, we went to the same university. So I was able to ask him
Oh, true.
questions. Yeah, so me and Femi go back like that. So
Yeah.
it was a thing of, okay, I could ask Femi questions if I had any auditions or anything or any scripts I'm practicing. I had somebody to rub minds with, right? So um at that point it was now like, okay, I know it's time for me to grow. I can feel it. So that's something about me that I'm another thing that I'm really grateful for. I feel it whenever I know it's time for a shift. It's time to grow, right? And I knew it was time to grow. It was time to move. So I went to Voiceover Academy. Like I said, I outlined everything that I knew I needed to learn. And when I saw the flyer again on Instagram, it was like they listed all my problems in the curriculum and I was like, okay, I'm going. Like even if I had any doubts in my heart before, I'm going, right? So booked the flights, stayed with a family friend in Lagos, and just went for the class. Went to Voiceover Academy, and I mean, it was pretty. It was such an insightful experience, and that was when I discovered that Mr. Sheon Shobo was the one behind all those ads I had been seeing as a child. Imagine how mind blowing that was for me. Because I grew up singing the Sky Bag ad, and then I discovered that it's Mr. Shobo, and he's the one that's going to be teaching us branding. That's insane.
Yeah.
So it was like a oh my god situation. I was so starstruck in class. But yeah, I was able to learn a lot of things. Those were the things that were holding me back, that didn't let me improve. So I also learned other things that were add-ons, like knowing the texture of my voice, So, and because I already knew my voice at that point, but when you get to learn more things about your voice, it helps you know how to control it better, right?
Mm.
What to do with it, what types of narration suit your voice better, and all that. But majorly, what really changed for me, what really shifted when I was at the Voiceover Academy, was that confidence in, that believing in yourself and putting yourself out there. They actually challenged us to start putting out content, right? So I learned how to negotiate properly. I learned to stand my ground, right? I mean, before, if I had said, okay, I'm charging 10,000 for this thing, and someone came and said, it's 4,000 I have, oh, I'd go like, okay, bring it. Because I was so
Yeah,
eager for the opportunity to learn. And it happens to a lot of young creatives. I was so eager to
a
learn, and I would just look
lot.
at every opportunity as I'll just look
Yeah,
at every job as an opportunity to build my portfolio, even though it was at a loss.
yeah,
So it was at that
yeah,
point I was like, okay, this is the value of my voice. I won't give it for free.
yeah,
you know I won't let
yeah.
anybody lowball me. I had to learn to stand my ground. And it also provided me with a community of other voiceover artists, like I wanted, and people that I could constantly
Mm,
run to for advice, for guidance, and all
mm,
of that. So yeah, that was what really
yeah.
changed.
To be honest, you're right. We can't overestimate the importance of having a community and attending a training, because you have the privilege of people who have been there before you, and they can instill that confidence
Absolutely.
in you and teach you how to negotiate. And I also have a very similar experience, especially when you're talking about the negotiation part. Just like you, I would go for, the low hanging fruits, take almost anything thrown at me, even though I knew that I deserved
Mm-hmm.
better, but also because of how it's not so easy to get the next gig. So you don't want to lose this one and
Exactly.
stuff like
Like, if
that.
I lose this one, where will
Yeah.
the next gig be?
Do you get? So when I attended the voiceover workshop and I started getting to know what is obtainable and how, these
Yeah.
people make the money and stuff, blah, blah, blah. It became another challenge for me, because now
Yeah.
I am now saying this is how much I want to be paid. And
Mm-hmm.
these clients, some of them aren't able to pay, so they move on to another person. And I realized that I
Mm-hmm.
was losing more gigs than I was winning. But
Yeah.
even though I suffered, at that period, it was temporal, because after a while, the confidence came when I would say, this is my price, and then they would agree to it, and I would make the money that I would have made in maybe 3, 4 gigs, in just one gig. So I was getting more confident. And now I can, I
Exactly.
state my price, that's how we roll it.
Exactly. Exactly.
I think it's
I
it's
mean,
growth.
as,
Yeah.
as talents, yeah, as talents, we must learn to stand our ground with certain prices, because even just aside the
Yeah.
fact that this job may go, or when will the next job come, when you're just taking every job that comes and just bending with the prices, before you know it, resentment for the work you do starts to creep in. Because as much as voiceover is talking, it takes a lot of energy, emotional and even physical. I know times where I'm narrating audiobooks, and I can't turn on the air condition, the booth gets hot, and I'm sweating profusely while narrating. The emotional, these things may sound like,
Yeah.
this doesn't even sound like hard work. Oh, I promise you, wait till you get in the booth.
It's a lot of work.
And when you know that
It's a
you're
lot of
not
work.
being well compensated, there's something I always say, that with creative work, to be honest, it almost feels like no price will be enough. But at the end of the day, whatever you're
Mm,
getting paid should be sustainable and beneficial, right? So that resentment doesn't
yeah.
start to creep in, and you get to start disliking both
Yeah.
the work you do and the clients you're working with, you know?
Yeah.
So it's always important to
Yeah.
learn as time goes on to stand your ground with your prices. You can be flexible with businesses that maybe genuinely cannot
True.
afford it, right? I
True.
consider that, what corporate, social corporate responsibility. There are times where
Mm,
during a particular period of the year, or at some point, I do free voiceovers, even, or voiceovers at giveaway
mm,
prices for startups, businesses, because
Mm.
these are people who genuinely cannot afford the services of a voiceover artist but need it.
Yeah, certainly. And so let's talk about studio because that comes with a lot of benefit. You and I, we share in the same privilege of having our own studio. And one of the things I've realized is that until you own your own studio, negotiation and pricing and stuff like that can be a very tricky space for you. Why do I say so? Because considering the fact that you need to go pay for a studio session and pay for a producer if you're not producing yourself, if you don't have that skill, and then your performance fee and all of that, it makes it a whole lot. But for people like us, we own our studio, we can produce. It's easier for us to bend the price. Say we
Mm-hmm.
want to be very considerate. Yeah, it's way easier. So those are like the benefits of having a home studio. So let's then talk about studios before we talk about making money again. How was the process like putting together your home studio? I remember early this year we had a call, and I was happy to see
Yeah.
your brand new studio, and I was like, "Woo!"
Pictures will be
But
released
you and I
online
know,
soon.
yeah. So you and I know that's not an easy game for anybody.
Oh, trust
But
me.
then if you're
Trust me, it's
Nigerian,
not.
that's really not an easy game because we don't have the we don't have the advantage of houses. Most houses in Nigeria are not built with closets. So a lot of
Mm-hmm.
times we don't have that privilege. We just have wardrobes, which aren't the best option actually. So you have to sort of do it yourself, DIY the entire thing, learn about
Yep.
acoustic. Let me leave you to do the talking. What was that like for you?
Okay. So before we quickly get into that, as much as I own my
Yeah.
studio now, right? I'm not under my parents' roof anymore. My studio is I live alone now, and that's a topic for another day.
That's so cool.
At the end of
Yeah.
the day, I pay rent, you know? And as much as I charge this amount as an
Mm.
entity on its own, I have to incorporate it
Mm.
into the prices that I give my clients. So as much as
Mm.
because I spent money in putting the studio together, I spent
Facts.
money in renting the place, you know? So as
True.
much as we say, oh yes, now I own a home studio, that means it doesn't give you room to just charge
It
nonsense
doesn't.
for yourself,
It
you know?
doesn't.
So
Facts.
my rates went up a little bit. And then for certain people, if you don't want me to use my home studio, and you gladly pay for another studio, no problem. But it's not a cutthroat price, but just something that
Mm.
contributes to the studio so that by the end of the year, the studio can pay for itself.
Mm. Smart.
Yeah, so
Yep.
yeah, so there's that. So I just
So
added a
how was it?
little to my pricing for that. So yeah,
Mm,
back to the question on
brilliant.
what putting this together was like.
Yeah.
Ah, at some point it was like, when will the spending end? Because I had a budget, I had everything that I knew I was going to do. We had gone to the market, and recently things have just gone crazy. There's something that me and my friends
Yeah.
were saying one time. We're like, it reached my turn to do adulthood, everything costs. Prices have literally tripled since January, since
Yeah.
December last year, and then even worse, January this year. So I built the studio in December,
Mm,
and there was just prices of things that I checked for in November were not the same in December.
facts.
You know,
Facts.
it's crazy. So the price of wood, the price of the foam I wanted to use, the price of suede, the price of rugs. So, and
Yeah.
fortunately, I have some experience, or I would like to say experience, but I'm very big on being a sound engineer, and I'm very big on
Mm,
sound, studying how acoustic padding and studio design works. It's a hobby of mine. I love to
mm.
study. Like, oh, okay, what would you do to this room to make it sound isolated, make it but not dead?
You
So
must
I
be a fan
always
of
like
Boot
to
Junkie
study
then,
stuff.
I guess.
Yes, I am.
Facts. Facts. All right, go on.
So yeah, a fun story. When I was building my first home studio at my parents', I watched a lot of Booth Junkies videos as a guide. And then Pinterest was my bread and butter. I was slipping inside Pinterest.
Mm.
So yeah, getting to know dimensions, how, and then just getting to know the basics of sound engineering helped me to be
Yeah.
able to design what I want my studio to be like. So it was still cheaper, because typically when somebody else wants to do something like this, they would have to get somebody that specializes in acoustic padding and
Yeah.
design to get it done for them. So for me, that was already cut down from the cost of building the studio. Um,
Mm.
then I just called my carpenter. He was the one that helped me build my first home studio too. I told him, okay, this is what I want. So I sat down with him. We started drawing out, and since I already got the place, he came in, would sit down, look at the place, make measurements, draw on the walls. Okay, this is how we want it to be. This is how we want it to be. And we just started, and within a week or two, we're able to finish up. It was like every day we're coming
Interesting.
in, getting the work done. I think the last part of everything that now took time was laying the rugs, because there's something about studios made for music recording and studios made for
Mm.
recording voiceovers. There's a
Voiceover.
difference.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a difference, because
Absolutely.
last year I suffered stuff like that. There were animation projects that I couldn't record in my studio because of either bad network, noise from around the neighborhood. As good as it was,
Mm.
there was a mosque behind my house, so it called prayers. It
Whoa.
interfered with my recording. Yeah, so I had to go out
Yeah.
to record. And in my
Yeah.
search for studios, I realized that a lot of studios were built to accommodate music recording, not
Music.
voiceover recording, because you'd have the casting director over the call say, "Oh, move closer to your mic. I can hear the sound of the room," because I
Mm-hmm.
mean, the room can't be too isolated when you're doing music, because the sound of the room also adds to the character of the music you're trying to create. But the other is the
True.
case, the opposite is the case when you're trying to create voiceover. What we need is your voice, and we need it to sound
Yeah.
as should I say secluded or
As
isolated as
dead.
possible, but not
Yeah.
dead.
Yeah.
Yeah, but isolated, but not dead, right?
Not dead, but yeah. The room, I mean, the room
Yeah,
sound itself is dead, but your voice is
yeah,
isolated.
exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I guess that's a better way to put it. So I
Yeah.
am great.
I
So I'm
mean,
really excited about
uh,
that.
the fact that you've done your homework to understand room acoustics, treatment, and all of that, that obviously played a huge role in you having a very
Hmm.
solid home studio, and I'm proud of you. I say
Absolutely.
congratulations again and
Yeah.
well done. Right.
Thank
Now,
you very
let's talk
much.
about something which you mentioned earlier. The fact that you can do voiceovers in various accents. Now, first off,
Yeah.
that is a huge plus for you and for any African, basically, because not just the fact that we can do voiceovers in our indigenous languages, but then we now are able to do, and I think that also helps. I was looking at your profile and you're a top seller on Upwork, and I was like, wow, this is impressive. But knowing this information, sort of like in my mind, I'm like, okay, this would also be another advantage to why you're able to, because I want to assume that you're not just getting Nigerian based gigs, but
No.
international gigs as well. Exactly. So that's a huge plus. But that's not even where I'm going to. I have seen a lot of people who think voiceover is all about accents. So they approach it from trying to study another accent, which I think it's not the best approach. Or should I say it's not even the right approach? Be- because I feel like you need to, first of all, be comfortable and master your own indigenous accent in a
Your
way
voice.
that you speak well. You are eloquent, right? And now that the world is going conversational, we need to bring that also to our own accent and our own language. So that would require less of trying to become another accent when you're doing especially Nigerian gigs, but rather trying to speak the way you talk to your friend on a normal day, right? So let's take this to animation. Gradually, we're beginning to see animation come alive in Nigeria. Um, you've been on Moji, which happened last year, which was a big one. Lately we saw Iwaju, from Disney with Kogali. And I know there are some
Yeah.
other animation works, going on. So
Mm-hmm.
let's talk about that. we need to keep it deep.
Mm-hmm.
I'll probably
Which will
cut
sound like
this out of the podcast.
376. No, 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 don't need to cut it out.
Yeah.
Let's just,
Okay,
but
we just leave it
we
there.
know,
We just leave
we
there.
know, we know.
All right. So, I'm saying this because I feel like people need to hear it from somebody like Serah Johnson, whom a lot of people I think look up to in the industry when it comes to animation, to understand why we need to respect our accents and use it to tell our stories the way they should be. I'm not against people trying to learn
Absolutely.
accent, but every time I see an animation script, people, Nigerians, Africans tend to read this script as though they were American, and
I'll tell
I
you
think
why.
it's also
Go on first.
yeah, yeah, because I feel like all our lives we were, taking in animation in that accent. But I want
Exactly.
to hear your opinion on this and your advice moving forward to people who want to delve into animation.
You already said part of it already. We grew up watching, we are a product of our environment. We're a product of the things we have consumed. All our lives, we grew up watching cartoons from Disney, Dreamscape,
Mm,
Pixar. We grew up
yeah,
watching cartoons from these guys. And what was it presented in? The American accents. I mean, it even took some time
true.
before black people got representation in these cartoons, not to talk of
Mm,
Africans, you know? And
yeah.
not like it's important that they represent. We need to tell our stories. We need to tell our stories by ourselves. We shouldn't just wait on somebody
Mm,
to come on with a white horse in shining robe to come and tell our stories. We need to tell our stories by ourselves. That was that. To tell you the truth, that was one of the reasons why I opened up my studio for external use, right? Because it's like, okay,
mm,
I want other voiceover artists to be able to come in here and tell stories, right? I want it to be a
mm,
sanctuary for storytellers, whether you're an audiobook
mm,
narrator, I want it to be that this place you're able to come in and tell stories, right?
mm,
So now back to the question, right? I think that you need to own your accents. You need to own your
mm.
accents, right? Because trust me, we have so many stories to tell. Before Nigerian writers are some of the most talented writers. Like they are so relatable. They are like we Nigerian writers are great. It's about time, and it is time that it is that time where I feel like the Western world is kind of bored of their own kind of content, so they're looking to other places for content. Their eyes are on Africa, their eyes are on Nigeria
Yeah,
because they see what we
yeah.
don't see. That we have stories to tell. Before, like, are we going to start talking about folklore? Are we going to start talking about
Mm,
our daily experiences? What is going on in
yeah.
Nigeria now is enough to do season film, but that's by the way.
Yeah.
That's by the way. We have incredible stories to tell, and you are going to have to tell it in your own accent, right?
Mm,
When people want to practice scripts, instead of just, and this is the importance of training, right? This is the importance of training. Learning to, when you find your voice, as much as you grew up watching American cartoons and the voices you can do, you can immediately attack it first with an American accent or a British accent. When you're able to know your voice and know how to utilize your voice, you are able to channel that skill of making a voice or a character voice, or any expression you want to make in your own accent. So I mean, while
mm,
it is wonderful, absolutely wonderful to be able to perform in other accents, definitely, I mean, in voiceover, versatility is beautiful. you know it is
mm-hmm,
very important at the end of the day to be able to speak in your own accent and utilize your natural way of speaking in storytelling and
mm.
in character voice creation. you know
Mm.
So yes,
Awesome.
to
I
that
agree
voiceover
with you.
artist out there,
I
own your accent.
I agree with you, Sarah. I do. And it's been an interesting conversation speaking to Serah Johnson, who started from wanting to study medicine, doing a 9 to 5, to becoming a
Yeah.
freelancer, making money. And it's really cool. But let me ask you, how do you manage being a freelancer? Now, this question is important because for someone who is not just any type of freelancer, but a voiceover artist. Now, the reality is it's not like we're under a particular employment that guarantees, the steady flow of gigs. We need to search
Mhm.
for gigs.
Mhm.
And you are
Yeah.
beyond just a talent. You are a business manager. You are everything. So how do you manage this reality? How are you able to put yourself in check, discipline yourself? Because nobody's going to say you need to be at work by 8 a.m. You have to do one or two things, right? So let's talk about that reality now. I don't know if you're exactly signed to an agency, but for many of us who might not be signed to an agency and we're looking at becoming maybe full timers in the future, what's that? How do we manage our ourselves? Not finance, but actually
Discipline. Okay.
the business, right? Being a
Right.
business person,
Mhm.
thinking business, managing, okay, how do I file this? What do I do? You're beginning to send emails. These are not things you want to be a voiceover artist, actually. You didn't say, oh, I want to become an accountant, or I want to become a customer service rep, or I want to become, I just want to do my work and be a voiceover artist. But you come in and you
I
realize that if
know.
this is the life you chose, yeah, so there are
You
many
have to wear
add-ons.
that hat.
So exactly. So that's what I want us to talk about. So how do you manage that, and what are the things to maybe look out for to be able to do and stuff like that?
Right. So, um, the business of it all, really, like you said, as much as you're a voiceover talent, you also need to remember that you're wearing other hats. And if you don't
Mm,
wear those other hats, and then when you get to the point where you can outsource them, great. But at the beginning, you're the one doing majority of it. You have to realize and
mm,
instill that discipline that if you do not track these parts, you will not grow financially, at least. You will not grow. So what I do is I keep a spreadsheet of every job that has come in, the earning. This helps you know how much you're actually making in a year or in a month. It helps you know what kind of customers you attract more. Like, you have to think outside of yourself. Think as a business. Think as a
mm,
business with yourself as the lead talent in that business,
mm,
right? So
mm.
that's why I said that, okay, as much as I have a home studio, the studio still needs maintenance. I have to think outside
True.
of myself. What is the cost of execution? What if something happens and I'm unable to use my studio? I need to go outside and book a studio. So now, if I didn't
Mm,
calculate that in, that means I have to dip my hands into the money for the talents, the performance, the performance, the money that was paid for performance. Do you understand? Let's say
mm. Yeah.
editing and mixing and mastering was supposed to be done. And I just say, Baba, don't worry, that one self is for free. What if I get sick and I'm unable to do it and the client is waiting for me? At that point, I can't outsource because I did not budget it. Either that, or again, you have to dip your hands into the performance money, which maybe you even
Mm,
lowballed yourself for. Do you understand? So
mm.
these are things that you
Yeah.
have to factor in. I and a friend were having that conversation the other day. These things need to be factored in, or else you will not grow as a business. You must think of yourself as a business. And a lot of times, people always say, I'm good. Jobs will come. It's not magic. You have to put yourself out there. And you need to put yourself out there, whether it's going to be with sponsored ads, whether it's going to be with email
Mm,
marketing, whether it's going to be with P2P
mm,
sites. For me, in the beginning, it was really just Upwork. And then at some point, I graduated to direct email marketing and reaching out to my clients by themselves, through LinkedIn as well. Optimize your LinkedIn today. These things are
mm,
very, very important. You can't just say, oh, I'm talented and so therefore work will come to me. It doesn't work that way. There are people out there who are not even as good as you, that are getting booked every other day because they're putting themselves out there. Whereas you, that you are good, you say you are not going to put yourself out there. So I think that's just
Yeah.
it. You just have to discipline yourself and learn to handle it as a business
Yeah.
and look outside of yourself. Think of how you would grow a
Mm.
business that belongs to you as opposed to just looking at yourself as a solopreneur.
Interesting. Wow. It's been almost 50 minutes and it's like we haven't
Already?
gotten into the in-depth. You see? But anyway, some other time we can still come talk about other things. I am very, very certain that we're still gonna come to this podcast to talk about some other things. And you know what I'm
Some
talking about.
other
But anyways,
things.
um I want to ask you this very interesting question. So Serah Johnson of 2019 versus Serah
Mm,
Johnson of 2023, you've
mm,
gathered a lot of experience. If you could
mm.
look at your 2019 version, who was, hoping to get into voiceover and all of that, and you
Or
could give
2017, more
that
like.
2019 version a couple of, or 2017, yeah. So if you could advise the 2017 version of you, what are those golden advice that you would give yourself?
Hmm. First off, I would give myself a very big hug and tell
Mm.
myself, your voice is beautiful and it's enough, you know,
Hmm.
and you are right on time. You are right on time. You're not late. You're not behind. You're right on time. And everything has been ordered for you, and your steps have been ordered. And what else would I tell myself? Yeah, keep training. Never stop practicing. Never stop learning. It's how you grow.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think
Hmm.
those would be the major things.
I love it.
Oh, and
I
yeah,
love it.
open
Your
your mind
voice
to
is
growth.
enough. Open your mind to growth. I love it. Sometimes we have that imposter syndrome, thinking our
Yeah.
voices are not enough, especially when we're not bagging gigs. But and I had that issue because for a while I wasn't bagging gigs and I kept developing my voice. It was until I started to realize that it was much more than the voice. There are other things like you mentioned earlier, that one has to do to get the gigs that one desires. So those are beautiful advice that you would give your young self. And I see the progression and I want to say big congratulations because not many people have had the privilege of getting a Sovas nomination, and you got nominated. How many times? And okay, let me let you do the talking. I mean, you've gotten a nomination. I can't remember
Two
if you won it or
nominations,
not,
actually.
but I want you to. And that was like the first year and the second year because Sovas is only you know awarded Africans
Open
twice.
to,
They just
yeah,
opened that
twice.
in
Yes.
2022. Yes, and you got
Yes.
nominated both years. All
Yeah,
right.
I did.
Yeah, I mean,
And I won
I
I
doff
won
my
the
heart.
first year.
You won the first year. So you're
Yeah.
one of the very few Nigerians who have a Sovas award. Like that is amazing, Sarah. I remember that time I was rooting for you all, and I did my own part in documenting these things down, writing about it. I'm hoping that I get my blog started soon so I can start write. Not many people are documenting stories about, Nigerians and African voice talents, and that's what I am standing for. That's what I'm representing. That's why we're having this podcast, and we're gonna,
I applaud you for that
evolve to bigger
Tcode.
stuff. Thank you. Thank you. It's been a good time talking to you here, Sarah. Before we leave, is there anything we should be expecting from Serah Johnson or anything you want to drop before we go, right? That
Huh.
we've not
Okay.
talked about.
Okay. So I mean, if you're listening and you're in Abuja, there's a sanctuary for storytellers here. You know, there's a
Whoop
sanctuary
whoop.
for storytellers. Come in, come record your voiceover. There's also vocal coaching, and maybe we may be
Mm,
offering some training for intermediate voiceover artists, coaching sessions. People who are
nice.
already in voiceover and are just looking for what direction to grow in and don't know how else to grow. Right? I think trainings are super super important, and
Yeah.
as a voiceover artist, you have to invest every year in your training, right? So I'm providing
Mm,
that avenue for voice talents to a community for voice talents over here. Anyway, so yes, if you're in Abuja and you want to do that, come on in.
Beautiful.
And yeah, I maybe
Beautiful.
let's see how it goes. Maybe a YouTube channel might be coming sometime in the year.
Yay! That's
Because I have a
beautiful.
lot of
That's
people that reach
beautiful.
out and they want to know the basics of voiceover, and I'm like, you know what?
I'm telling
I might
you.
as well. I might as well.
I'm telling you. I'm telling you.
But yeah, let's see how
I've
the
been having
year
a lot of
goes.
that.
Let's see how the year goes.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I can imagine the how it is when people get into your DM almost all the time. And that's
Hmm.
what also led me to create the code voiceovers with Tcode. And it's a platform that I try to explain, in few seconds or minutes, some voiceover truths. I think I'll call them that. And yeah, it's been cool. So well done, Sarah. Um, for people who want to contact you, do you mind just telling us how they can reach you? Although I'll be dropping links in the show notes for those who also would
Okay,
like to click a link.
absolutely. So to reach out to me and connect with me on Instagram, that would be _ Serah Johnson. SERAH Johnson. That's JOHNSON. Serah Johnson _ Serah Johnson. You're gonna see me in my whites talking into a mic. And then you can connect with me on LinkedIn as well, Serah Johnson. Yeah, Serah Johnson on every platform, pretty much. So, but where people miss
Amazing.
it is the spelling. It's an SE,
Oh yeah,
SERAH.
SE, not SA.
Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. All right, that's it for today's episode with the amazing award-winning, audiobook, animation, commercial voiceover artist from Nigeria, right here in Africa. We're talking about no other person than the amazing Serah Johnson. Thank you so much for being a part of the podcast today, Sarah. I like that. Uh-huh. Oh yeah, and yeah, that wraps it up for today's episode of the Everything Voiceovers podcast, the African Perspective. Thank you guys for listening and for watching. If you're watching on YouTube, watch out for the
Mm.
next episode as I'll be bringing another guest and we talk about what it feels like or what it is like to be a voiceover artist in Nigeria. Till then, I remain Tcode, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye, guys.